lasted a long time, and when we took a vote, everyone in the room voted for the 6-to-8 configuration to move forward, just to recommend it, and to start working with our community.
Okay, thank you.
And there were some people that weren't there. So.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to maybe turn the conversation back to the actual situation for the kids, going from 5th to 6th grade, if I could. My kids actually did very well in a school where there wasn't a middle school like this, 6 to 8. Their experience was, as they went into 6th grade, it was almost like they're growing up in a certain sense. They weren't little kids anymore. And one thing I noticed in your proposal is that you have a buddy system, which I thought was fascinating and extremely useful. And I would hope that every kid who goes into 6th grade would have one. That's one thing that I would hope. I hope you retain that. I also would hope, because it is a transition, that you also consider additional counseling hours for this, because I think Trustee Borgiolo did make a good point where he talked about how for some kids, obviously, they're going from the biggest kid in 5th grade to now the smallest kid in 6th grade. I remember myself when I went from 6th to 7th, we had the old-fashioned 7-8. And I think there's a lot of merit in this. I just think it needs to be vetted. And again, as a board member, anything that I could do to help that process of community involvement, I'm here to help. I really think it's very important that people know that this is probably another choice that we have, and I'm very much in favor of choice. It's not like we're shoving this down people's throat, as far as I see, and we're approaching it in a very measured way and a graduated way. That's what I see. So I hope we can keep open minds about this and explore and see if this might not be a good thing for many of our kids. Thank you.
Any further comments? I have some questions, if I may. So let me ask you first off, what's the fiscal impact of the district? What would happen if we did or didn't do it?
I don't have exact numbers for you. I think the fiscal impact would be twofold. One, from the facilities perspective, we'd have to think about, as we did this year, putting additional portables on all of our elementary campuses. So that would be one consideration. We'd have to quantify what that facilities impact would be. Obviously, we'd have to offset if there was any facilities impact in reconstructing Britton, although as it stands now, Britton could house roughly 1,000 students, and currently is at, I think, 632. So there's quite a few empty classrooms at Britton right now. The other potential facilities impact would be if we added additional services. We've already added additional counseling this year. That was one item that was brought up by a trustee. Potentially additional admin support depending on the ratio that we wanted to utilize. As far as overall staffing, I think the model that's being proposed would essentially just be moving our existing teachers over, so there wouldn't be an additional teaching cost associated with that. Obviously, if we move away from self-contained classrooms to more of traditional middle school where they would have a cafeteria, there's no cost associated with that.
Thank you. And as an adjunct to that, how would student transportation be affected? And I know that this is a tough question, but short version.
It wouldn't be, we're already providing transportation, so it would just be additional students on the bus.
Right. And academic impact was somewhat referenced there, but vis-a-vis Common Core and or other changes that are going on, do you have any comments or thoughts? I understand people are looking for some evidence, but in terms of academic impact, what's your personal and or professional perspective on it?
Well, as I mentioned in the presentation, I think that many of the standards, especially in science and math, are laid out 6, 7, 8 because many districts have that configuration. So it makes it easier for teachers to plan. It makes it easier to assess students if they're on that same pathway and are having those conversations. I know that I've been meeting with science teachers, and they're concerned right now because 6th grade teachers are still part of the K-6 configuration. So how do we bridge science education from that elementary configuration to the 7, 8 middle school configuration that we have now? I mean, if you can make it happen, of course, through setting up opportunities for that collaboration, but it's much easier if you're on the same
And as an adjunct to that, specifically speak to next generation science standards as well as mathematics opportunities, do you see it being beneficial having our sixth graders perhaps being able to get into an accelerated math sequence and or science?
Absolutely.
So I see that being an advantage to the district and to the students. What about the social or emotional impact on these sixth graders as they interface with an older students? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I think that if we do this, we have to implement something like We Belong Together, which is one of the programs, or sometimes they call it Link Crew. So there's programs and there's curriculum that's written specifically to help schools. They buddy up an older student, like an 8th grade student with a 6th grade student, to help them through that transition process. So we definitely have to put those kinds of supports. We talked about, where do we integrate 6th graders with the older students? In some schools, as we start increasing the number of 6th graders on a campus, we might want to have, separate PE. We might want to not have them out on the playground, out on the campus at the same time. But we also want to create opportunities for students to get to know their peers from different grade levels. So it's a great opportunity to help build their social skills as well.
Was any consideration given to perhaps disciplinary issues, i.e. younger students being affected or influenced by older students? Whatever problems may come.
One of our board members made a remark about that, and there is that potential that they're influenced by older students, but I also, again, it comes back to the quality of the programs that you offer, and all of the supports that are in place at Murphy as well as at Britain, all of the different positive discipline and social emotional supports that are in place are all built in. Just like you build in academic interventions, you build in behavioral interventions as well, all with focus on being positive.
It would seem to me, too, that the research basically is somewhat inconclusive as to the best configuration.
Yeah.
Okay, but speaking as a parent, having daughters that have gone through a 6 through 8 configuration when they lived in the Moreland district, it worked well. It worked very well. You've answered a number of my questions vis-a-vis the presentation with regards to team teaching, block scheduling, staffing effects. But what about advisory? Would our 6th graders not be exposed to guidance counseling? We have guidance counselors in those schools.
Can I ask Principal Griffin to answer that?
Sure.
Can you repeat the question? Advisory, 6th graders being involved in advisory and counseling.
So I think the advisory opportunity would be something to put into consideration when designing a bell schedule, unless it was a part of that elective time. And so there's obviously an opportunity for creativity. What would that look like? What would those minutes be like? I know that our staff feels very strongly that when looking at giving students and teachers an opportunity for an advisory time, that it's very structured with curriculum or a program that the teachers can follow and the students can be a part of. So another consideration when looking at how to plan that opportunity for kids. But it definitely exists, and there's lots of places that are doing things like that that we can look into to rely on for that creativity.
How would I'll leave it open to all three of you.
Okay.
How would you see the community involved with this mix? I mean, I know you've done some preliminary work, but what would be your plan to get greater community involvement?
So the committee recommended strongly that we begin to talk to elementary families at every site and answer questions and hear how the community feels about this proposal. I also just want to clarify, because when the board item was written, we submitted it before our last middle school configuration meeting. So the idea of the phase-in, the committee really wanted us to talk to parents first to see if there was interest for that. So this is a proposal that's kind of twofold. One is 6-8 configuration, and then we have to decide when and how, and that involves looking at facilities, looking at funding. And so I just want to be clear on that, because the committee also expressed the need to have a plan. So when can we expect all of our kids to move over to Britain or Murphy? And so that's one. And then the other one is, do we go ahead next year with the phase? So I just want to make sure that I'm representing the wants of the committee in terms of really making sure that we do a good job with parent outreach.
Just some of my personal thoughts based on your answers and just what I read and studied. I see an advantage in curriculum improvement, especially with access to higher level math and science classwork, okay, for the benefit of the sixth graders. Access to the extra co-curricular activities is a definite plus. I see this certainly being cost effective for the district, not just the district in terms of space and other. I see an opportunity for greater parent involvement in the middle schools. Right now, secondary schools in general have, I don't want to sound indicting, but less support than, let's say, the elementary schools do. We see that evident in our own school books. And I do believe it would be a more supportive environment for the Common Core method of methodology. So, I mean, I think it's a great idea. I look forward to your continued work. Any other comments? Thoughts? Okay.
So what, because the phase in is something that we can just assign, and make happen. The final 6th through 8th determination for both schools would go beyond a phase in, like the committee asked not to call it a pilot because we don't want it to seem like an experiment, although Trustee Gerard frankly said that he would appreciate the experiment or thought it was a good idea if it was an experiment. The key for this consideration for next year is that it would be volunteer. And knowing that people who volunteer to have their students in a program are also dedicated to make sure that it's going to work and feel that it's a positive influence, positive change for them. My worry on that alone is that we're going to have to stop the enrollment at some point because I think that there's going to be more that are interested in 2 classes or 3 classes. And so the committee did talk about that a little bit of what would that mean if you have 5 more students than 2 classes, or you'd have to basically stop the list. We can implement this, and I'm going to need some sort of consensus from the board to implement next year, and this would be short of the determination for full 6-8. So in some sense, they identified the phase in as part of the overall program, but it can be taken in isolation. And the challenge here, and what the committee had asked for, is the opportunity to do outreach. And in the outreach, if we don't feel that we can make it work, that we don't have enough, we already did some survey of parents at Los Paseos, and we know that there's interest there. We also know, anecdotal from some of the parents that were on the committee, that there's interest at other schools. So we want to provide that opportunity. Now, so what happens if the board determines that they don't want to go 6-8, we don't want to go 6-8, in successive years, then the phase-in students go to 7th grade, and we wouldn't have a 6th grade at Martin Murphy for the following year. So you see how it's a way to pull back on the implementation process for the phase-in. Do you have questions about what I'm asking? I'm asking for a consensus to move into the phase-in program and authorize the committee to go out and survey and do the education about what this is all about to bring back to you for a final determination for 6-8.
So I have a question with regards to that, Steve. I mean, Dr. Palmer alluded to the Hanover study, and I know we talked about it at the prior board meeting.
Yes, actually, we talked about options in the grade level committee in the last board, not this board, since the trustees necessarily, although we did bring it up at the Home and School Club meeting and talked about it in depth at the Home and School Club. So those of you that were, I think most of you were there at the Home and School Club. So, and parent, we got some parent input and questions.
So my question regarding that bringing up the Hanover study was, did you need to review the board, to inform the board that you formed the committee and you were going to go through this process? Now you're asking us to approve the process?
No, what I want, we don't want board action on the 6th grade. We could change classroom assignments from, depending on need. For instance, we changed special ed. It was a struggle, but we moved some special ed classes to Los Paseos. So, in different grade level configurations is a whole different thing. But as far as the movement for just next year, I'm asking for consensus. I hear that we have lots of questions, and that's part of this process, is being able to answer those questions that you posed and that the committee posed to go out and do outreach. So I know I didn't answer your question by the look at your face. I'm sorry.
No, I guess in layman's terms, you're going forward. You went forward with the program as of December.
No, we went forward with the grade level configuration committee to give a recommendation to staff. So they're giving their recommendation to me. And we're going to bring pending the outreach efforts that the committee and staff is going to make, we're going to bring a recommendation to you, whether to, fully go as a staff, whether as an action item, or whether to go 6th grade at the middle school. After the outreach. At this point, what I'm asking for is something separate. Concurrence to go to Martin Murphy with a minimum 2, maybe 3 classes for next year of volunteer. That first phase for 15, 16.
That's what you're asking for to move forward with that is different than getting out.
Right.
What are you asking for? You need some direction on where we want to go with this?
To implement, we need to know that we would like to move to have the 2 classes, at least 2 classes, maybe 3 classes, at Martin Murphy for next year. And we can assign them, right? But I want to know that the board is supporting that as part of the outreach.
Okay.
Maybe we can do it another way. You gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, not recall that we talked about the fact that for sales is over capacity, that if you didn't make the move to transit students over to Martin, you would end up having to put portables on campus. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you weren't paying attention. So,
Hey, that's good.
nonetheless,
I don't appreciate that, Bob.
so nonetheless, the item has been addressed in the past. Okay. What the superintendent is asking for is let him manage the project for us to stay out of the weeds. They're the professional educators. They're putting the program together. They would like to have our general consensus without a vote to go forward and do their job, so they may come back to us with a recommendation for action. Does that make sense? So with that in mind, do you gentlemen and ladies oppose in going forward to do his job?
I oppose it. We don't have fiscal implications. What it would take. Those are key areas.
That's what they'll come back with.
For phase 1, okay, and I saw that Trustee Borgioli wasn't sure about what's before you, right? So maybe you have questions for me about this. So for phase 1, let me just explain what I'm asking for. I'm not asking you to approve 6th grade right now for both schools. That's the recommendation from the committee. What I'm asking for is if we're not going to be able to go 15, 16 at all, phase 1 as part of a bigger group or any movement of the classes, unless we start right now. Okay, and enrolling students, we've already had the 6th grade orientations. They're prepared to do the 5th grade classes coming in to orient at at the middle schools if we can, and they're prepared to do all. Fiscal implications for phase one or the pilot, if you prefer, is very, very minimal. It's a matter. There's no teacher increase. I don't know.
Yeah, as far as materials, supplies, whether that be Chromebooks or books, it's really moving over classes that we have on those exams. So it would be time involved from our maintenance team in boxing up those classrooms over from one campus to another. Very minimal, it involves staff time, not necessarily expenditures.
The committee's sensitive that you're going to want input from the general community. Even though we've done some anecdotal outreach and we did a survey with students and parents at Los Paseos. So that's why there's no recommendation here. This is the first time we're talking about it, as was mentioned, which is the right thing to mention. This is the first time as a board, you're talking about the project as it's been laid out in a realized plan that you saw here.
Can I say that one thing that I'm glad to see, when we opened up the Jackson Academy of Math and Music, there was such a feeling of excitement in this room that night. I can't even express it. When I see these people who presented tonight and what I'm hearing from the parents who run the committee, I see that sense of excitement again. Now, there's definitely going to be wrinkles, bumps in the road that we're going to have to do. There's no question about that. But somewhere, somehow, we have to get a feeling from the parents. If they come back and say, the parents really aren't interested in this, that large segment of parents, and we've got that. There's no question. But I think we need to have this committee and have the teachers or whomever in charge of this to go out and have their community meetings and then come back and report to us.
We have a committee member who'd like to testify.
I want to make sure that I think Dr. Martinez-Palmer stated adamantly what we all agreed to at our last meeting, and that is that we do propose that the 6-8 middle school phase in, but that the community outreach comes before going and approving any move to Los Paseos next year. That it would be after those community, or you would have a community meeting and have a survey at the end of a community meeting to see if there was actually community support to move to Los Paseos, or to move especially Los Paseos to Murphy next year. Not that we would move now for this phase in and then do community outreach. That the community outreach was the first thing to all community members in all the schools. And then maybe at those outreaches or soon after, to give those 5th grade parents the opportunity to say, one, to ask questions, to give their, I think it's a good idea. I think it is not a good idea at all that we would bring to the board, but also that we would bring to the board, is there enough interest for next year? That those outreach, the outreach occurs first, and then we bring to the board whether or not that year 1 phase-in would occur. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the clarification, because nowhere in this rationale does it say that. So thank you so much.
That's because the rationale.
I understand.
I just wanted to clarify.
I heard you the first time, and it seems like we got the cart before the horse. That's all.
Trustee George.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. And I guess I have total faith in what this committee is doing, what they're attempting. I'm very excited about what they're doing. I guess the only concern, I'm not really sure it's a concern, I would want to make sure on behalf of the Los Paseos students that somehow there'd be a way that they get preference. In other words, if there are 60 slots and 60 parents want their kids to move into 6th grade down the street, that they would be given preference. Because I think we talked earlier tonight about the fact we don't have a San Jose representative here, and I'd like to speak on behalf of them. And if we don't have 60, then we could maybe go to the other schools. But I feel that that community you have is, you already have interchange between Murphy and Los Paseos, and let's build on that. Let's make it a success.
So can we safely tell the superintendent that he can have his committee go forward? Everybody agree with that? Of course. Donna? You and board allowing the superintendent to go forward?
I'm in favor of moving forward.
Trustee Gerard? Yes. Rick, you said yes. Okay, at this point, it's 9:35 by board policy. To extend this meeting, we have to have a vote of the board. So I need a motion to extend the meeting.
I would like to make a motion to extend the meeting and with the intention, because we have a student here, obviously, I'd like to bring G13 forward so that we can get the student. G13 was
Community outreach.
she's here for that in the interest of the students.
What do you want to send the meeting to?
We have a motion to extend the meeting to July 11th. Actually, after 11.
I second
11:10.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, 6-0.
Mr. Benevento, I'm just suggesting if we are, we could take, if there's someone who needs to leave, we could take the public comment and then continue with our agenda as approved.
For that particular item.
For that
To
particular
the
item.
person, one student.
Yeah, because, Mr. Padillo has some knowledge of, someone's particular schedule, we could hear their public
Sure,
comment.
youngster, like to come forward now.
Well, we were all sent an email today, just before board asked to bring that forward. So just, we're all.
I did not
Yeah.
receive.
You guys get an email?
I did not get an email to that.
I have 8 cards.
She sent an email.
I think you should just have a speaker up. Bring it up so we could go home.
We have a student who wants to make a statement?
She sent an email
She sent
Oh.
an email.
that for the board, her input was part of that email to be considered for chief.
Okay. I don't know that anybody got the email. Can we continue on with the agenda schedule?
Yes.
Okay, item G3. This is a public hearing.
I thought we just voted to. No, we didn't.
It was part of his motion.
I don't know if this is.
I thought that was part of the motion. I'm sorry. Misunderstood.
We have a motion to extend. That's what we voted on. To extend the meeting to 11
Just to
o'clock.
extend the meeting. And then,
Or just to extend.
I asked you to come to the meeting and bring it.
Okay, did everybody understand?
That's what I seconded.
And so some thought it was a different motion, but it wasn't.
No, that's not correct. And because of, I'd like to address that parent out there. Because of the rules that we can't look at our phones during the time that we're on the board here.
You want me to read it?
So if you could read, I think as a suggestion, or I can read it because I received it.
we are out of order. This is not in any way. I would like to hear from people, but I want to make sure that we do follow, proper procedure for that. So if we are going to take public comment, but I voted to extend the meeting, I did not vote to bring G13 forward. So I think we need to take those separately. But I am willing to have, if people want to go home, give public comment and we can continue with the agenda. And when we get to G13, we can discuss it, but we will have given the public an opportunity.
Okay. Let's go back. Trustee
But we
Padilla,
still
would
should
you
put
like
funds
to
away.
repose your agenda?
Made a motion to extend the meeting.
So because people misunderstood the motion, I think it is important to take a revote on that particular motion because it wasn't clarified as the motion for everybody.
Is that the
So you're going to revote on your motion and your second. This is parliamentary, so.
Okay. So we have a two-part motion. Extend the meeting, call the agenda item forward. We have a motion, do we have a second? Do we have a second? Second. Okay. Vote, all in favor, forward, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay?
Nay.
Nay.
3-3.
3-3.
Okay, so the
Tie motion means the motion fails.
Well, there's no time. We can't. Everybody goes home then.
But no,
We gotta go home.
yeah, unless-
Now, if we want to have a motion to extend the meeting, we need another motion. We have a motion to extend the meeting.
I move to extend the meeting
Jesus Christ.
We have a motion to extend the meeting to 11 p.m.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So what do we do now, ladies and gentlemen?
So your
Well, let's get
policy-
13. Bring 13 up
your
and let
policy
parents go.
is that you have to make a motion to extend past 9:30. That's your board policy. You
Come on.
certainly can continue on on with the agenda, breaking your board policy.
why would you want to do that?
Well, I hope you do it because we've got a lot of business on here that we
Yeah,
need to
well, let's bring 13 up.
On item number 3, we
up.
have 16 items on the agenda.
and somebody would have to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
We wanna go
otherwise you
home.
keep going, and it would have to pass.
Bring it up for 13 so we could talk and go home.
We do have,
Bring it up.
I have one item, so G5, for example, that's a legal requirement that we submit to the county, our budget for the second interim prior to March 15th, so if we don't act on that,
Well,
we
but
would
then
be
go.
out of
Let us go first.
Um,
Go 13 first.
Mr. Batondo, would it be a proper parliamentary procedure or within our privy to make a motion that we hear public comments on G13
Let's
now
have the
and
discussion.
then continue with the meeting, having the
No, I
discussion
want a
later?
discussion.
Is that a proper motion, or do we need to extend the meeting first to be able to continue?
Unless you adjourn the meeting's going to continue. So you'd have to have a motion and 4 of you to vote to adjourn the meeting. I hope sometime tonight. I've got to take off to Sacramento at 7 a.m. Maybe before that, it would be great to adjourn. But
Just get 13.
you can make any motion you want at this time, but you have to recognize the president.
Just discussion. 13.
I'd like to give the public the opportunity to speak to G13 and this time,
No.
and then we continue with
No.
the agenda.
No.
We have a second.
No.
Having no second.
So once again, I'd like to make the motion to extend the meeting to 11:10 and bring G13.
Yes.
We have a
That's the one.
This is kind of like
No, that's the second.
a second.
somebody in the outside committee meeting, we've had items next to last, third from last, and have all kinds of public comments. Why are we moving this up?
Why
I want to
not?
know.
It's already a
I
vote.
want to know why we're moving this up. Somebody give me that answer.
Okay, because there was an email sent by the student and it asked.
I did not get that.
That's not my fault.
That's right, Mr. Wolf. What did I do, Mr. Wolf?
Rick, I have more respect for you than to have you say.
Okay.
Come on,
The
Mr.
student
Wolf.
said she didn't care to comment this evening anyway.
No,
Is that
No,
correct?
that's
not about that, Bob. It's an email that was sent to all the board members. It was signed by myself, my husband, and my daughter. My daughter's here witnessing this, and just having G13 behind some of the other items. I think Rick was just commenting to move it forward out of courtesy, and really, it
good
does
courtesy.
not need to be changed for us to submit the comment.
So then we don't need to change.
But I don't want to comment without hearing the item. And if the
Yeah,
meeting's adjourned, we're
that's
not
right.
going to comment. Right?
But she sent her comments via email?
To all of
We
you.
can see them later.
You could-
The meeting is. I'd like to have this meeting continue. I'd like to get on with the agenda schedule. So, may I have a motion to continue the meeting, please? May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a vote? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any nays? Okay. We'll continue the meeting. We'll go to item G5.
You can't
because
do
by
that.
law we have
Whoa,
to
whoa, whoa,
continue
you
to
can't
do
do that.
that.
That's nope.
We're gonna go to it.
Yep.
Unless somebody makes a motion
That
and
passes.
you pass the motion to adjourn the meeting, you're going to continue on, basically breaking your own policy, which is just breaking the policy on making a vote pass. Which has been done many times over.
We have obligations to the public hearing about our employee groups because negotiations can't continue. We have several things.
Since we can't break a deadlock, just continue as scheduled. This is
No,
a
you
public
can't do
hearing.
that.
Item G3, public hearing, conduct public hearing, and accept service employees in national union open.
Can't do that.
Rationale, California Government Code 3547 requires that, quote,